and welcome to Moms on a Mission. The US dollar has lost 85% of its value since the 70s, when the dollar was no longer backed by gold. With the government printing as much money as they want, inflation went up 9%. Gold and silver are the only assets that will withstand inflation. Invest in Beverly Hills Precious Metals today to protect your wealth. Go to bh-pm.com and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. That's bh-pm.com. Also, email us at moms@momsonamission.net and check out our website at momsonamission.net. And please follow us on your favorite platform. Our guest today is actually the epitome of Proverbs 21:8 that says, "The righteous are bold as a lion." He graduated from Oral Roberts University, served as the Oklahoma director for the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, was the crusade director for Christ for All Nations, and the dean of education at Victory College. Then in 2017, he and his wife, Kendra, became lead pastors at Sheridan Church. Welcome to Moms on a Mission, Pastor Jackson Lahmeyer.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you for coming. So Sheridan Church, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do and your relationship with that church.
Yeah. So my wife and I, we stepped in 2017, and, the church has a very rich history. We actually turned 73 years young this year. So the church has been around in the Tulsa area for quite a while. Ups and downs, just like every business, it's kind of a roller coaster. Sometimes it's a good season, sometimes not so good of a season. But out of Sheridan came Rhema Bible Training Center. So the first couple of classes of Rhema was at Sheridan. Victory Church with the Dohertys came out. Kenneth Copeland started his ministry at Sheridan. David Barton was the youth pastor at Sheridan. Fred Price came out of Sheridan. You got a lot of, the hub of the charismatic movement.
Minor people, right?
Yeah, just. So, that's the history of the church. But when my wife and I, when we stepped in, it was not good. It was rough. It was really rough. There was maybe 40 people left at the church, and they were all above the age of 70. There was no kids. I mean, you can just imagine.
Lots of wisdom.
You could just imagine,
Yeah.
And so things were really rough, and the church was financially just terrible. It was written. They didn't tell me all this, I'm a young guy. I finished my master's at ORU. I'm ready to jump into ministry. Here's this historic church, and they're like, "Yeah, we want you."
Of course you do.
So we jumped in head first. Had no idea what we were getting into. It was a rough first couple of years, because some churches you plant, right? It's like giving birth to a church. This was not giving birth to a church. This was resurrecting a dead church, so it was a totally different experience. But, now the Lord has blessed the church, and we have grown tremendously, and a very healthy church. Have a campus in Tulsa, but also in Oklahoma City. And so it's been a good thing to watch. It's been a very interesting 6 years, and it's grown me personally, but we've seen some great things, and our church is, I guess you'd say, polarizing within the city of Tulsa. Would that be a way to describe Sheridan?
Understatement. Yeah. What is the vision? Because obviously this church launched some massively well-known, very successful evangelists and ministers. Is the vision the same now as it was then, or what?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's why we launched a campus in Oklahoma City, and this is out of Sheridan came 30 other churches in the Tulsa area. So you have 30 churches in Tulsa today that were planted out of Sheridan, and so it's kind of a mother church, which you'd call, from a biblical term, an apostolic church. And so it's got that mantle, it's got that legacy with it. And so we're just thankful to get to be a part of it, seeing God. It's not identical in the way that it was, 40, 50 years ago, but God's doing a new thing. That's the exciting part. It's a new thing is taking place. And so, it's an honor to get to be a part of it. And, the Lord has blessed the ministry in ways that I didn't see coming. And we've also taken heat in ways that I didn't see coming as well. And so it's kind of, Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness, right?
That's
so
right.
That's kind of been our theme.
Yeah, that seems to be a scripture that you hear more these days than maybe 10 years ago or
Oh,
whatever.
absolutely. So, well, persecution 10 years ago was, oh man, somebody said something mean about me. And today things have absolutely changed.
Yeah. Clearly you must have gotten bored. You have 5 kids, right?
So we have five
kids, 1 church, and then you ran for Oklahoma's open U.S. Senate seat. You opened another campus in Oklahoma City, started Sheridan Bible College, and then initiated most recently an organization called Pastors for Trump. Talk to us about that and why the Guardian and Rolling Stone felt the need to write hit pieces on you.
Well, yeah. So I was asked to launch Pastors for Trump, which is doing extremely well right now. We have over 10,000 pastors in all 50 states on board with this coalition. And so with that, the left-wing media, they understand what we understand. The largest voting bloc in America is the evangelical voting bloc. The problem with evangelicals is they just don't turn out to vote. Our voter turnout is dismal. So if you could get evangelicals to turn out and vote in mass, you would win every single election and it wouldn't even be close. It wouldn't even be close. So how do you get the largest voting bloc mobilized? How do you get them out to vote? And I believe that the primary way to mobilize the Christian community is by mobilizing their pastors, because Christians listen to their pastors. The pastor is their shepherd, giving guidance. And so our goal is to mobilize pastors to tell their congregations, hey, you need to get out and vote, and you need to vote your value system. Now, what does that mean? Well, it is impossible for a born-again evangelical Christian to vote for a Democrat just based upon the belief system. Now, we're not saying that the Republican Party is perfect, because and I know it's the furthest thing from perfect. But in regards to the value system, the Republican Party matches way more closely than the Democratic value system. And so that has been our mission. That is to mobilize the largest voting bloc, and that's what Pastors for Trump is. Also, we pray for the president, and we give advice when there is a need for it, and say in a particular area. And so it's been a really cool thing to get to be a part of. I didn't see myself leading that, but here we are, and it's going really well. I see a pattern of you getting asked to do things. Yeah, and not saying no. Yeah, right. Asked to start a church, asked to run for U.S. Senate, asked to do Pastors for Trump. I mean, yeah, it's maybe that's just the way the Lord deals with me, because I need people. When I was going to run for the U.S. Senate, I was totally against it. My wife, though, she was so tired of me griping and complaining. She was like, "You need to do something about it." And I was like, "Well, I don't know what to do about it." And then I was on a podcast just like this right here. And General Michael Flynn saw the podcast. And I'd never met, none of us knew General Flynn at this point. General Flynn then called me after he saw the podcast and said, "You're going to run for the U.S. Senate." And I was like, you don't tell the general no. I was like, my wife's saying that. Now General Flynn. I'm like, are you really General? Is this the real General Flynn? No, I've never met the guy before. Right. And so, General Flynn said, "You're going to run." And my response was, yes, sir. So that's how that happened. Well, clearly you studied history at ORU. So you're very astute. The true history from primary sources, not revisionist history. Sure. Yeah. No, I did my undergrad and my master's in church history, and a lot of church history took place right here in the United States of America. And so, you get to study, the original documents, not just, a interpretation of what those are in today's context. And so that really, I think, laid a solid foundation for me. And, people will talk about the boldness of our church. And the reason that is just simply, I think that there was some knowledge that we have in regards to like 2020 when it was, shut down your church. Well, we didn't shut down our church because I was just like, the First Amendment guarantees us the ability to gather and to assemble and to worship. And so that was just knowledge of the First Amendment. I didn't know anything special or secret, but I just was like, I'm pretty sure the First Amendment trumps the mayor of Tulsa. That was just kind of my interpretation. And, it gave us a sense of boldness to stay open. And thank goodness we did. It was a real defining moment for our church. And I think it also helped the city as well of moving forward in regards, because you remember how crazy it was in Tulsa area of wanting to shut down everything. And so, I went to ORU, and I had the time of my life.
So when you did keep your doors open, I know Clay started a church, the Remnant Church. So he was another church that was open. Were you all the only two churches open that you're aware of? Do you know if there are any other
I
ones?
I know there was others. We were the first church in Tulsa to do drive-in church services. So I would preach from the roof, and that was a blast
Do you have
because
pictures of this?
I do. I have a picture. It was really crazy. I'm on the roof and an airplane flies over my head and you can like see the airplane in the back. And so drive-in church was really fun because you know how people we're like a charismatic church and so people engage during the sermon. Well, you know, they're out in the parking lot. And so instead of saying amen, people would like honk their horns while I was preaching. It was the wildest thing. It was just wild. And it was like really fun because I was like, they're honking their horns and but it was great. We did that and then it opened, other churches followed suit because, oh well, if they can do it,
Yeah.
then we can do the same thing as well. And so yeah, that was what an interesting time that was. And I got a feeling we're entering into another season that's going to be very similar to 2020.
How do you think people are going to, I guess churches is your, area, but how do you think churches and Americans will respond if they try to shut us down again?
Well, I think this time you're going to have a much different response. I give grace to the pastors and the churches during the beginning stages of 2020. Nobody really knew what was taking place. There was so much information being thrown at us. There was such this just, what is happening in our nation. And so out of just not knowing, out of let's be rather safe than sorry, we'll close down for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the case may be. But at this point, I don't think they can pull that off again. I don't think the majority of churches. Now, there will be those that do whatever they're told to do. They will do it. They will follow suit. But I think most pastors and churches now are probably aware of the fact that wasn't good for us to shut down while the liquor stores, the strip clubs, Walmart, Home Depot, everybody else got to stay open. But churches, there was just like this real push. You cannot gather as a church. You cannot gather. You cannot. I remember you can't sing. I was like, why do they want that? And you remember this. So I think this time around, or at least I hope so. I sure hope so. I hope that churches make a much better biblical decision this go around, and we'll see who learned the lesson from the first time.
Yeah, yeah. And you certainly are a light of hope and such a great example for pastors. I mean, usually it just takes one to make it a little bit easier for folks to get in step and follow. So thank you for your courage and just, for knowing our history. Just saying.
Or I was just dumb enough to, sometimes you're just dumb enough to do it. And that was, I had nothing to lose. It was just, we were going to have church. I just thought that was the right thing to do. I'll tell you what the really hard part was. The hardest part of that whole thing was I had pastor friends who were much older than me who would call me and tell me I was embarrassing the ministry by, not following, the orders and things like that. That was the toughest part. The tough part wasn't from the city. It wasn't from the media. The toughest part was other pastors that came down pretty hard on, I'm the youngest pastor in Tulsa. And so a lot of pastors have spoken into my life to help, build and all those type of things. And that was tough. That was a really tough thing because I respected all of them. I still do. But, you kind of feel like I'm on an island all by yourself. And I just remember my wife was kind of the strong force of like, no, we're going to keep moving forward. And, if you lose friendships and relationships over this, that's fine. And that was the toughest part. But I believe this go around, I just sure hope, I can't imagine pastors and churches being willing to shut down again. I hope not.
Well, I've heard pastors say they're not going to, from the pulpit. And you also see all the memes online that says, do not comply.
Exactly.
So I feel like that didn't happen the first time around. So I think you hit the nail on the head when you said we just know too much.
We know more now. That's why I'm not sure if the 2024 plan will match necessarily identical to the 2020 plan. I don't think happens and works again. Yeah, I think they'll have a COVID surge and those who buy into it, they're going to buy into it. It is what it is. I foresee, some different tactics this time around and that try to scare us into submission, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Thank God for the word, right?
Amen.
He's not given us a spirit of
Amen.
fear, but of power, love, and of sound mind. So speaking of hit pieces, let's talk about the latest one from the Tulsa World. I know that was last Friday. They claim the Sheridan Church appears to be breaking the law by hosting political rallies. When your church recently held its annual, this wasn't just for a political situation. It's your annual Ignite conference. So it was the 2023 conference, and you had Laura Trump, Kash Patel, Oklahoma State Superintendent Ryan Walters, Tulsa County Sheriff Vic Regalado, and Tulsa City Councilor Jamie Fowler speak. What do you think is fueling this hatred from the Tulsa World?
Well, the Tulsa World has been coming after me since we kept our church open. That was 2020. We were labeled, I remember it. We were labeled a super spreader in the city of Tulsa. And, you remember that? You remember the super spreader? We were a super spreader because we stayed open. And then we never enforced the mask mandate. Mm-hmm. And oh my goodness, that brought about, we were killing everybody because we didn't do masks and all those different types of things. So the Tulsa World, which is total trash. I mean, the Tulsa World is total trash alongside the Washington Post. And I'll tell you a funny story about how these hit pieces work. In 2021, it was September, actually, same time around here. Do you remember when Joe Biden declared, if you don't take the vaccine, you're going to lose your job? That was the basic, thing. So the day after Biden says that, I get with Clay Clark, who's a mutual friend of both of ours, and I'm just like, all right, what can we do to combat this? And Clay's like, you should start signing COVID-19 religious exemption forms. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So there's people in our church that I'm signing religious exemption forms so they can keep their job without taking the vaccine. And all of a sudden, because I was running for political office, everything I did was scrutinized. When you're running for office, you breathe wrong, it becomes a story. And so the Washington Post picked up on that I was signing exemption forms. And so I was in the panhandle of Oklahoma. I was campaigning at this time, and the Washington Post calls me. I have terrible reception. And she's like, hey, we're running a story about you signing exemptions, and we want to give you an opportunity to comment. And I said, I'll comment if you'll do me one thing. I'll comment on this condition. You have to include my website in your story. And she said, well, let me check with my editor and I'll get back to you. So the editor approves it. So they put my website in their hit piece story. Oh, it was a total hit piece. You go read it, you think I was like Hitler's son or something like that. But they included my website. So what would happen if anyone searched on Google COVID-19 religious exemption form, guess what popped up first?
Brilliant.
Me.
Yeah.
And so since then, because of the Washington Post, I've signed over 70,000 COVID-19 religious exemption because of the Washington Post. Total hit piece that backfired.
Yeah.
They helped save more jobs and more lives than what they did if they would have never even have ran a hit piece on me. And so same thing with the Tulsa World. The Tulsa World released this story that we broke the law by having, political figures or whatever the case may be at our church. I kind of have two responses to that. One, when the Black Democratic churches stop hosting political candidates, then we'll consider not hosting political candidates. But in regards to breaking the law, we didn't do anything even close to that. There's the Johnson Amendment that they always like to throw out, which has never been utilized, by the way, but they like to throw out the Johnson Amendment. What that is that a nonprofit 501c3 cannot endorse a political candidate or political party or make financial contributions to political candidate or political party. Neither of those things took place. Jackson Lahmeyer is not a 501c3. Jackson Lahmeyer is an American citizen who has the right to support, endorse whoever he wants to support and endorse, and so does every other pastor. And so, they just do those things to try to scare you into submission. Oh, we're going to report you to the IRS. Do it. We've been being reported since 2020, so you can keep doing it. Nothing. I mean, think about it. I ran for the U.S. Senate while pastoring the church at the same time. You can't get any separation of church and state than that. And people would tell me, you have to step down from your church if you're going to run for office. I'm not stepping down from my church. I'm going to keep pastoring my church and I'm going to run for office. And so unfortunately, a lot of people, though, they buy, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. They buy into the Johnson Amendment thing. And the Tulsa World's trying to use that. And, other news outlets will pick up on it and they'll come. But you mentioned it, the Rolling Stone, the Guardian, the New York Times, all of these outlets have attacked our church, and it only helps. It always backfires, because what they intend for evil, God has this amazing way of turning it and intending it for good. And so that's been our story. And like I said, I'm forever grateful for the Washington Post. And so I'm grateful for the Washington Post because we got to help a lot of people because of them.
Yeah. Which that scripture, Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose.
Absolutely.
And Pastor Jackson Lahmeyer is proof that that scripture is alive and well.
The Washington Post wanted to destroy me. I mean, you go read this thing. It's bad. It's like I didn't like myself after I read it. Type of, I was just like, man, when you learn new things about yourself in the media type of thing. And I at the time I was like really discouraged because the Washington Post comes full-fledged at you, and I'm just like, golly. But then God did what God does, and the Rolling Stone, they did what's called a profile on me, and so it was like a book, it was like a biography. And, they just try to make you look like you're insane and crazy. But because of the Rolling Stone hit piece, Pastors for Trump exploded because they talked about Pastors for Trump. And then it just explodes because people, the Rolling Stone is a known outlet and things like that. And so thanks to the Rolling Stone, we got a lot of pastors signed up. And so, yeah, you take a hit, and it doesn't feel anybody who says, oh, I love getting a hit piece written about, they're crazy. That's not true. Nobody likes that. But God knows how to use it.
That's right. So what would you say to pastors? I know you're very well educated on history. And so the separation of church and state, that was Thomas Jefferson writing to the Danbury Baptist ministers who were concerned that the government was going to come in and dictate how churches were going to be run and if they would be run. And so talk to us about what that actually means. And can pastors really feel, I know some of them might be afraid of losing their 501c3 status. And can you speak to pastors and how they should be emboldened to speak the truth?
Oh, absolutely. And I understand. Most churches, they live offering to offering. That's just the vast majority of U.S. churches. And so if you were to lose your tax exempt status, your church would be in dire straits because then you would have property taxes, then you'd have sales tax, just all the things. And so, and most churches, they're living offering to offering. And so that is a real concern. How would we make it if we had to pay taxes and things like that? And so I understand, and I love there's this big push and movement, just abandon your 501c3. And I disagree with that. I say keep your 501c3. I mean, people have told me get rid of your 501. I'm like, I'm not getting rid of the 501c3. Our church is that. We are in compliance with everything about that. But separation of church and state, man, you talk about a phrase that has been totally abused and misused, and you are correct. It was in a letter from Thomas Jefferson to a group of preachers. And that phrase, separation of church and state, it's not in any of our founding documents. It's not in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, Bill of Rights. It's in a letter from Jefferson to a group of people that he knew. You have to put it in context, because something that you realize, context always determines meaning. Context always determines meaning. And so what's the backdrop of the early stages of the United States of America? We have separated from Great Britain. We have separated from Europe. Well, in Europe, they had state-run religion. So if you were born in Germany, by default, you were Lutheran. If you were born in Italy, by default, you were going to be Roman Catholic. If you were born in Great Britain, you were going to be Anglican, because it was state-run religion. And so the state dictated the affairs of the church. And so we, here in the United States of America, were very clear on something. The state will not dictate the affairs of the church, meaning if you were born in North Carolina, that doesn't mean you have to be Baptist. Or if you were born in New York, it doesn't mean you have to be a Presbyterian. There is freedom of religion. The state will not dictate the affairs of the church. And so these preachers are concerned. Are we going to have the same thing that was in Europe? Or is the state going to tell us what to preach, how to preach, and what we shall be? And Jefferson says, no, we've built up a wall here, that the state will not tell the church how to conduct itself. We've intentionally designed our government that way. And so people will take that and say, well, the church isn't supposed to have anything to do with the state. That's impossible. It's absolutely, I mean, you go look at our founding fathers, you have about 250 of them, 250 founding fathers. 95% of them were devout Christians, 95%. Now, there was 5% who were not. Jefferson is one of them. He was not a devout Christian, Benjamin Franklin was not a devout Christian. Franklin said something interesting, though. He said, every public school in America should teach the Bible. Now, this is a guy who's not a Christian. You got to realize he is not a Christian, but he knew something. Our form of government can only operate if you have a moral and just people. So people will say, what is wrong with the U.S. form of government? Nothing. It's the people that are in the system. That's the problem. It doesn't work if you have corrupt people. Thomas Jefferson, when he was president, you'll find this interesting. It's the year 1800. He's the president of the United States. The U.S. Capitol has just been completed. And Jefferson allows a church to gather every single Sunday in the newly built U.S. Capitol, which he attends, by the way. He attends that church. But Jefferson, you ever been to a church where there's some people, they just don't like the worship music? They just don't like it. And so when you're the president of the United States and you don't like the worship music, you have a little influence, right? And so Jefferson brings in the U.S. military band every Sunday to lead worship in the newly built Capitol building. And as president, Jefferson uses taxpayer funds to give to Christian missionaries to go evangelize the Native Americans. Now, this is the guy that wrote Separation of Church and State. And he obviously didn't mean for the church to have no influence within the government, because that would be, they were all Christians. They were all Christian. Now, Jefferson was not, but he also recognized the value and the importance of the Christian faith here in the United States of America. So when people use that phrase, they're totally off the rocker. It has nothing to do with keeping pastors or churches from making an influence. Why would the church be the only organization in the world that's not allowed to have some type of you hear lobbyists, all you got big pharma, they're lobbying. You've got all these groups but the church is the only organization that can't influence the government. And there's a reason they do that, because the church is the most powerful institution in the world, and they don't want the church to influence our government. And so it's just simple things like that. When people learn those things, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. And when pastors understand, that's what Pastors for Trump does. We help educate and inform other pastors. What can you really do? What does separation of church and state mean? What is the Johnson Amendment? And then we provide legal support as well. If they feel like they're going to get in a conflict, we have lawyers who are ready to help them as well. So that's the mission. That's what we're doing. And it's going really well right now.
So do you think, with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, I know we did not anticipate that, although we thought that we were going to have to deal with that the rest of our lives.
Absolutely.
It's been around forever. Do you suspect or anticipate any new interpretations of this, Johnson Amendment and the separation of church and state?
Well, I'll tell you a story. When President Trump first got elected, he gathered a bunch of pastors down at Mar-a-Lago, and it was just pastors only. And President Trump had, how President Trump is. He knows how to get a crowd fired up. He speaks to whatever that crowd is looking for, and it's pastors, right? So he's talking about abortion. He's talking about, issues that matter to Christians, issues that matter. And then President Trump mentioned, I'm going to get rid of the Johnson Amendment. And you would think the building would explode. You could hear a pin drop in the place. It was the most ironic thing. And I just think that there's this concern. Here's a concern. If the Johnson Amendment is removed, what is the pastor's excuse for not addressing political issues? And we know what the reason is. We don't want to lose members, because if I talk about a divisive issue, what happens? People leave. And so I foresee the Johnson Amendment completely being removed. Completely. That's a goal of the Trump administration. It's a very necessary thing, because then it does remove the excuse. It removes, and people say these are political issues. I don't think they're political issues. I think they're biblical issues, like gender and life and marriage and just those type of things. So I foresee the Johnson Amendment being completely obliterated, which it's never been used before, by the way. That's another thing. It's never been utilized. And so there's no need for it. The reason it's never been utilized is because if it was to go to the Supreme Court, which it would, they know the answer. They know what the result is going to be based upon the Constitution. And now in regards to Roe v. Wade, to your point, we never thought, we just thought it was going to be one of those battles, and then boom, It's overturned suddenly and it's sent back to the states. So like a state like ours, Oklahoma, we're nearly an abortion-free state. Not completely. We still have some legislation that needs to get pushed forward. But we're nearly an abortion-free state. And that's thanks to President Trump. Mm-hmm. That is indirectly thanks to President Trump. And so that's where whenever you'll hear some Christians, they'll say, how could you as a pastor support President Trump? And my response is, how can I not support nobody move the needle for the Christian agenda like President Trump? Nobody. It's not even close. And so I'm excited. I think some great things are going to take place in his second term. I truly believe that he is going to win in 2024. And it's going to be 4 years of scorched earth, 4 years of scorched earth. It's going to be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we're overdue. Are you concerned that when you are so black and white about these issues, you talk about pastors are concerned about being divisive and losing members. What has that done for you? What has occurred when you've been so bold and strong and very clear? What's happened with your church membership?
Well, it's a complete polarization. If you were just to go ask people within the city, it's either we love Sheridan or we hate Sheridan. There's not like there's not really a neutral ground, which in today's world, I don't think there can be a neutrality. We're talking about life. We're talking about death. We're talking about two genders or a fluidity of however many you want. So there's not really, how do you get a common ground between killing babies or keeping babies alive? I don't think there is a compromise there. And so, yes, it has been polarizing. However, we've seen our church grow by leaps and bounds because of the boldness, because of people saying, oh, they will address what is happening all around us instead of putting their heads in the sand, acting like none of these things are happening. So, yeah, have we lost people over it? Oh, you better believe it. Yeah, we've lost plenty of people over it, but for every one we lose, God sends 3. Yeah. And so it's been addition through subtraction sometimes. But you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. That's, I can't guarantee the church will continue to grow if we're continuing to be bold. All I know is this is what I believe the Lord has called us to do, and we're going to do it. And I believe God's favor and his blessing will be upon it.
Well, I've heard people say God's will, God's bill, and as you follow his will, he's going to take care of the attendance. He's going to pay the bills. He's got that. And I also, just from my personal opinion, is that in these tumultuous times, this is a spiritual war. I would think that people would feel safe under your leadership and you calling a spade and knowing the issues and then calling them out. I would think that would make your folks feel super safe.
Yeah. And I think they may not agree with everything I say or everything I do, but at least they know where I stand, because one of the things I'll hear from people is, I just don't know where this pastor stands on because it's never addressed or talked about it. So at Sheridan, you will know. Like there's, I wonder what he thinks about this. You'll know. And I'm very active on Twitter. So that's kind of, you'll know. And people do appreciate that. It doesn't mean they agree with everything I say or my tactics. Sometimes, my wife is the first to tell me that's not the way to do this. And she's much more refined and dignified than I am. I'm more of a brawler. I'll get into a Twitter war with some, I was in a Twitter war with Congressman Adam Kinzinger not too long ago. Him and I are just going back and my wife is like, just stop, just stop. And I'm like, no, this, and so, or Keith Olbermann and, he's, anyways,
another story.
We'll keep your show clean. So, but yeah, people know where we stand. And I would just encourage other pastors, take that stand. These are not political issues. They've been hijacked by politicians. These are biblical issues. And the culture will go as far as the church allows it to go. And unfortunately, the church has allowed the culture. Think about it. You've got such confusion among gender. Just basic things that, I'm not that old, but I remember when I was in school, that wasn't even like a debate. How many, we didn't even talk. There was guys and there was girls. That was just basically it. And guys competed against guys and girls competed against girls. There were just some things that we took for granted that now my kids they're having discussions at school about, they call them furries and, just all these things that, I was on a cruise not too long with my kids and my wife. And so every night it was like forced dinner time because, on a cruise, you get dinner. Yeah, our lives are so busy. We don't sit down at the family table every night. So for 6 straight nights, we're having dinner together as a family. And my kids are just unloading everything that's happening at school. And I'm like, what is happening at school? I'm like, y'all are getting pulled out. We're homeschooling. I'm just like, what is happening at school? And so these are things the church has allowed the culture to continue to push. And evil never stops itself. Evil has to be checked by good men and good women who are willing to stand up, take some arrows. It's part of it. You've taken some arrows, take some arrows. But understand something, God protects his people. He really does. And so the weapons may form, we know that, but that doesn't mean they'll prosper.
That's right. And speaking to the gender concept, I mean, we weren't even using the word gender. We were using the word sex. When you think about even transgenderism, it was transsexual. You were transsexual. Right. You're not transgender, but there's the war of narratives is a real thing. And the word has been changed to gender because that's not backed in science. That can be fluid. That can be whatever you feel. So if you say transsexual, then that is a biological factual statement. Yes. And so, I mean, I just think that this is so key to have a pastor who's speaking on these issues to educate you and to equip you, because we all are going into this world, and whether your kids are in a public school or a Christian school, I mean, this is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Yeah. We will all deal with these things. And so how awesome to be equipped by your pastor. Sure. Which really, that's the way it was back in the day when our country was founded. There's a story of a certain military gentleman who was a pastor, and you probably can tell this story where he had his military uniform under his robe. Yeah.
It's a great story, actually. It's he was preaching a sermon out of the book of Ecclesiastes. There's a time for, rejoicing. There's a time for mourning. There's a time for laughing. There's a time for crying. And then he closes his sermon. He says, there is a time for peace and there is a time to fight. And he says, now is the time to fight. And to close, you talk about a dramatic sermon here. He takes off his clerical robe because, all the preachers back then, they wore the robe. He takes off his clerical robe, and what's under is his military uniform. And he calls all the men of his church to come alongside him. And they form the first militia to begin the Revolutionary War. And so, pastors help give birth to the country. They really did. So many of the signers of the Declaration, they were also pastors. And so pastors help give birth to the country. And that's why I am convinced, and that's why we started Pastors for Trump, that pastors are going to help save the country. Just as pastors in the beginning days help give birth, pastors are going to have to play a vital role in saving the country. Otherwise, the politicians aren't going to get the job done. I mean, I've got many political friends, and I think they're great people, but they're not going to be able to get the job done. Churches are going to have to stand up in mass and throughout the communities and to make a difference, to push back on the culture. We're to be countercultural. The culture is bent towards evil. That's just what the culture is. And so the church has to be the salt and the light of the earth. And unfortunately, I think we have not done the greatest of job, not every church, but most churches. And so now's a good time to get it together, especially as we're going into what's going to be it's going to be a wild political season. Oh my goodness.
I'm so glad that you are bold and brave and are really leading the way and pioneering the path for pastors to take, to be educated, to be bold as a lion, and to speak the truth. And you have to know what your freedoms are before you can defend them, right? I mean, absolutely. And you can't lead where you've never been. So pastors need to know this, and what a great example. And I'm sure they can join Pastors for Trump, but they could probably connect with you and
well, we always reach out to the pastors. We have a team that reaches out to ask, hey, is there anything we can do to help you? Got any questions? We always send out an information back. So we want to make sure the churches and pastors are equipped. And that's one of the mission goals of Pastors for Trump. So it's been a beautiful thing. I mean, you're talking over 10,000 pastors. How many people is represented by those 10,000 pastors? Some of the pastors, they may pastor a church of 50 or 500 or 1,000. And so, you just got to imagine the impact that a pastor has, because every single week he has an audience that trusts him, an audience that listens to his voice, because he's the shepherd. That's where he has been placed. And so that is why we've gone after mobilizing pastors as opposed to trying to mobilize the entire evangelical base. I really believe if you can mobilize the pastors, the base will be mobilized as a byproduct.
Well, and our history certainly supports that. Yeah. So how can our folks find you, follow you, support Sheridan.church? What can they do there? You're on all platforms.
We're on all platforms. And so people can go to Sheridan.church, real simple website, Sheridan.church. And they can see sermons that are on there, or they can go to pastorsfortrump.com. So it's pastors, the number 4, or FOR. Trump.com, and then they can get involved. We have a monthly prayer call where we bring on great people. President Trump was on not too long ago with us, and President Trump called in at the church the other night actually too. So that was fun. But yeah, Sheridan.church, pastorsfortrump.com, and all the sermons, all the messages, everything is up on there. And I've got 2 messages that your audience may in particularly find interesting. They're on YouTube still. They haven't been removed yet.
Shocking.
But one is about the truth of separation of church and state. I did an entire sermon on July the 4th about that. And then I did one that I took a lot of heat for, but I felt it was necessary, a biblical response to the gay and trans agenda in our country, and just walking through what does the Bible say about these issues, because so many people, I think everybody is affected by this in some way. Everyone's got a family member that's struggling with it. Everyone does. It's not just now, a few people here or there. And so those 2 sermons, very controversial, but I believe they're also very beneficial.
And probably very biblically based.
They're all Bible based. That's kind of our motto at Sheridan. It's we go through the Bible verse by verse, line by line, chapter by chapter. Right now we're in the book of Acts. We just finished week 20 of the book of Acts, and we started chapter 5. So I don't know how many weeks we're going to be in Acts. Acts is 20 something chapters. We're going to be there a minute.
And I think I saw on your website, you meet on Wednesday nights to go over the book of Revelation.
So we did the book of Revelation in 32 weeks. It took 32 weeks of going through that book. Right now we're in Daniel on Wednesday nights. And so, people, I was always told, don't ever do sermon series that are verse by verse because it bores people. That was what we were just told. And so I used to do topical sermons, we're going to talk about love, or we're going to talk about joy, whatever the topic may be. And then the Lord just spoke to me, go through the book of Genesis verse by verse. And I was like, I don't know about that, Lord, because, I don't know how interesting they're going to find going through the genealogies and, all these different things. And we did it, and our people loved it. They were just like, they just wanted more of the Bible. And so since then, we've gone through Revelation, Acts, Daniel, and that's been the approach at our church now.
I think that's awesome. And I have heard some people say about current churches that where they don't really use the Bible so much anymore. They talk about concepts and topics, but they just don't. Some might say one scripture, and I think some people miss that. I'll
tell you, conventional wisdom right now among training up preachers is you don't ever say the Bible says. That's you don't say those words. This is just what's being taught to the next generation of preachers, because not everyone believes the Bible. So you have to teach the concepts, to your point, or the principles. They're good principles. You don't say open up your Bibles to, you don't do that. And those are things that we don't do anymore. And unfortunately, I think the opinion of pastors is good. But the opinion of pastors does not transform, neither change lives. It's the word of God that does. And so for me, we want to be very Bible-based. The Bible trumps anything I say or any opinion that I have. And so we've kind of gone counter to the current methodology, but we've seen God bless it as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. So www.sheridan.church, and then pastors, the number 4 Trump. They can go online. And then if they want to see your Twitter wars, they can go on
Twitter.
X.
X.
Yeah.
I got to correct that. I always call it Twitter.
That just seems a little too short and sweet
X
for a
is
name.
like weird though. Right?
Yeah,
it's like, I'm on X. I don't know.
It just sounds bizarre. I don't know. But anyway.
But yes, I constantly find myself in a Twitter war. And I shouldn't spend as much time doing so. I'm confessing my sins live right now. So my wife can say I've been telling him not to spend so much time on Twitter. So, but I've got very strong thumbs.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And you also have very factual statements, and whether it's constitutionally or biblically and morally, these are sound anchors that you're sharing, and
Amen.
that can really help our nation get back to its godly moorings. But thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Thanks for
coming
having me.
on.
And what a beautiful set you
Yeah.
have in here. And man, Moms on a Mission. The key, I'll tell you, whenever I was campaigning, I was shocked at what I discovered. The people who are keeping this country alive, unfortunately, is not the fathers and the husbands. It's the moms and the wives. And it blew me away when I was out campaigning, because the ones who were most concerned about what is taking place was the mama bears. And the mama bears have been activated. And we need some papa bears to come alongside the mama bears who have been in the fight. And so, but Moms on a Mission, wow, just keep doing what you're doing. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Thank you. So everybody, let's check out Sheridan.church and Pastors for Trump today. And then if you want to get entertained, let's get on X and check out Pastor Jackson's wars he's having. And then thank you so much for listening today. If you will go to momsonamission.net, you can see all of our podcasts there. You can see our mission, fill out the email information. We can stay connected with you, but we'd really love for you to follow us on Rumble. We have 2 hits on YouTube. So, we're there for another minute or so. So we love you to follow us on Rumble just for backup, so you don't think we went MIA or anything. And then please follow us there, and then reach out to us. We love hearing your comments and questions at momsonamission.net. That's moms@momsonamission.net. And thanks so much for listening. In light of recent bank volatility and skyrocketing inflation, diversification is a must. That's why I use my good friend Andrew Sorcini at Beverly Hills Precious Metals. Beverly Hills Precious Metals makes it so easy to diversify. I personally ordered some silver and it arrived on my doorstep just a few days later. They make it so easy. And if you're not ready to do that and you just want to ask a few questions, they're there for you too. I personally got some silver and also am rolling over some of my IRA. You can actually roll over your IRA and have it be backed by silver and gold. So if you don't have any extra money to invest in silver and gold, rolling over a 401k or an IRA, or even part of it, if you just want to try it at first, just for a little bit, you can do that as well. So go to bh-pm.com today and ask all your questions. You can connect with somebody. And like I said, you can just get some information at first if you want and pray about it, and then get back with them to roll over part of your IRA or all of it, or order some gold and silver. That's bh-pm.com, and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. Hey, everybody. Did you know that recent research from the CDC says that millions of Americans develop parasitic infections and symptoms often go unnoticed or are misdiagnosed? Parasites are actually the cause of many health problems such as anxiety, depression, chronic pain, fatigue, and unexplained digestive issues. We all need a common sense strategy to improve our health. Moms on a Mission encourages you to reach out to our good friend, Dr. Jason Dean. Dr. Dean's Full Moon Protocol provides all natural detoxification and fights inflammation. And the supplements are made with 100% organic ingredients and are proven to kill parasites safely and effectively. I know after I took Full Moon Protocol, I had more energy. To order your Full Moon Protocol today, go to bravetv.store/mission to save $20 off your first order. That's bravetv.store/mission. According to leading sleep experts and sleephealth.org, over 50 million Americans struggle getting a good night's rest. That's why Moms on a Mission loves MyPillow. MyPillow makes amazing pillows, sheets, mattress toppers, robes, towels, literally almost everything you need for a good night's sleep. They also make dog beds for your dogs. So by going to mypillow.com, typing in the code MISSION, you not only receive a high quality product, but you're supporting Moms on a Mission and this podcast. If you like what you're hearing and you agree with it, you believe in it, and you want to support Moms on a Mission, then go to mypillow.com today and order some high quality products, and just type in the code MISSION at checkout and you can save up to 66% off. That's mypillow.com, code MISSION.
Since 2014, Organic Body Essentials has offered clean, simple, certified organic skincare. Our organic face-to-feet and federally compliant hemp and pet products are manufactured under USDA and FDA guidelines. Our products are inspired by God using plants He created. In Ezekiel 47:12, it says, "The fruit is for food and the leaves for healing." We believe in the power of God to heal, so we pray over our products and for our customers. Our therapy in a bottle approach has been widely received, and our customers' testimonials continue to inspire us. You can find us at organicbodyessentials.com and obe.organicbodyessentials.com. Please feel welcome to reach out with questions. Use coupon code MISSION at checkout for a discount. Thank you for your support by using Mission at checkout to benefit moms on a mission and their quest to reestablish traditional values in our education system and empowerment for a healthy lifestyle.